We're proud to announce CISO Stories, a new podcast series in partnership with Cybersecurity Collaborative and Cyber Reason. CISO Stories features the candid perspectives and experiences of frontline senior security executives and dives deep into timely security topics. CISO Stories is hosted by Todd Fitzgerald, VP of Cybersecurity Strategy at Cybersecurity Collaborative, and Sam Curry, Chief Product and Security Officer at Cyber Reason. Listen weekly as they speak with extraordinary CISOs by visiting securityweekly.com/CSP. Today's connected world leaves no room for errors. Neustar reliably secures those connections. Neustar's cloud solutions, which include web application security, DDoS protection, DNS services, IP geolocation, and threat intelligence, ensure network availability across the globe. With over 20 years of award-winning security experience, Neustar proudly enables and protects digital assets of some of the world's largest enterprises. Find out how your company can benefit from the power of Neustar's trusted connection by visiting securityweekly.com/Neustar. Secure your world with Neustar. Always on, ultra secure. Welcome back, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. If you missed Security Weekly Unlocked, you can access all of the content on demand, whether you registered for the live event or not. Simply go to securityweekly.com/unlocked and either log in or register for all of the awesome content. Ilia Kolochenko is the founder of ImmuniWeb with over 15 years of security auditing and digital forensics practice. He joins us today to discuss the challenges of discovering and handling exposed data and vulnerabilities before the bad guys do. Ilia, welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me today.
And of course, Adrian Sanabria is here with us for this interview as well, which is good because Adrian, I think, did a lot of all of the testing on ImmuniWeb in our not so secret lab testing projects. Welcome, Adrian.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, Ilia and I have already had some interesting conversations on this topic, and it's good to record them this time.
Yeah, awesome, outstanding. So, Ilia, how did you get started with creating the company ImmuniWeb?
So, ImmuniWeb is my second company. My first company was an MSSP provider, and we've been doing a lot of traditional cybersecurity services, spanning from penetration testing to digital forensics. And I've been always dreaming about building a scalable global company. This is actually what we successfully did at ImmuniWeb. We now operate 24/7, 365 days a year in over 50 countries. And at ImmuniWeb, we scale application security. We aim to make it easily consumable, practical, and we really, try to make it valuable for different people in the teams. I'm talking about software engineers, I'm talking about penetration testers, and IT people.
It sounds like, Ilia, that you're covering a lot of ground, but also kind of very focused in keeping your application secure, but also including, I think, a very important component, which is attack surface monitoring and dark web monitoring in that. So I guess you kind of give us an overview of what your goals are. Like if I sign up for ImmuniWeb, you've got some great community editions out there for people to try. Like what can I expect and what problems are you solving?
That is correct. And at ImmuniWeb, I'd say we try to deliver value and we try to deliver practical insights to our customers. We mostly do business with medium and large size organizations from regulated industries like banking, healthcare, government, e-commerce. And our customers usually have a common challenge: how to identify all their web applications, APIs, on-prem or third-party hosted, to make sure that they're not missing anything, to ensure that their application security testing and remediation program is holistic and complete. And the second challenge is how to prioritize both testing and remediation. I think we all agree that today in 2021, it's just economically impractical to detect all of your vulnerabilities. It is likewise economically impractical to remediate all of your security weaknesses. It will just cost too much. So at ImmuniWeb, what we do, we try to provide our clientele with a holistic visibility, a sort of helicopter view of their external attack surface, including web applications, API, cloud storage, third-party managed and hosted SaaS systems, network services, IoT devices accessible from the internet, virtually everything that cyber criminals can detect and start their exploitation campaigns. Once they have this visibility, we'll perform risk scoring to shed light on potential weaknesses, vulnerabilities, misconfigurations, to ensure that testing and remediation will be performed in a risk-based and a threat-aware manner. Then we support our customers with penetration testing for their web applications, APIs, mobile applications, and we try to ensure that our customers will have a data-driven approach to their application security and will get the value. And importantly, that everyone on their side, I mean, software engineers, penetration testers, IT administrators, will have some practical value. We have full stack integration with DevSecOps tools and technologies to make sure that everyone will see something helpful, because I come from traditional penetration testing, and a decade ago, some traditional penetration testing reports were just a paper-based or PDF report that you cannot really leverage for efficient remediations, and software engineers didn't like penetration testing, to put it mildly. Today, we try to make sure that everyone in the team will have one-click access to the data, will have readily available 24/7 support in case of any questions, in case of any assistance that may be required. So we really try to ensure that everyone in the team will get something beneficial for him or her.
Yeah, I really like that it's a holistic assessment, because I think we think about the components of an assessment, that is to understand your attack surface, to understand some of the conditions which aren't necessarily a traditional vulnerability scan kind of thing, and then also do that penetration testing exercise, which I've found, super important. I think recently I've kind of lost sight of some of the value, and then I go off and I do a penetration test of a web app, or I look at it closely, and I'm like, you really need that human step. Like you need someone looking at your web app and trying to understand how to cheat it, right? How to bend it in ways that it wasn't necessarily meant to. But that's very different from assessing the vulnerabilities, and also very different from understanding the attack surface.
I agree, and that probably also adds that today, I think we all agree that visibility is a key, and it's like step 0 to ensure that your application security program will be efficient and effective. But I also believe that keeping an eye on the bad guys is also super important. This is actually why at ImmuniWeb, we provide a bundled solution of attack surface management that is combined with dark web monitoring. So you will get not just your assets, but you will also see what is the surrounding activities of the bad guys, what they're doing. You will be informed about phishing campaigns, about domain squatting, about fake accounts in social networks. You will have a good overview of what's going on underground hacking forums, marketplaces, IRC channels that are still alive. You will likely get some information about trivial incidents like stolen credentials from third parties to more sophisticated and dangerous incidents like stolen backups of your executive emails or compromised cloud storage that belongs to your organization. So we really combine visibility with the surrounding threat landscape, because I believe that in 2021, visibility isolated from the threat landscape is insufficient.
Yeah, it's interesting. I like the Darknet Diaries podcast, and they just talked about the LinkedIn breach from 2011 and how they found their database on the dark web. And it took them 6 weeks to backtrack and uncover, like a team of 40 plus people in 6 weeks to do the forensics investigation to figure out what happened. And it was neat to listen to this in all one podcast because it tells the whole story. Like they traced it back to someone with a Mac at their house that was using VPN, and the whole story was really interesting. But the initial indicator of compromise was, by the way, your user database, that's on the dark web.
Yeah, I agree. And it was sort of acceptable in 2011, but today I think all possible governmental authorities in the United States and the European Union will be very unhappy, will likely impose harsh sanctions. And under GDPR, CCPA, companies who just find their database on the dark web saying, wow, that's look interesting, I think they will have long-lasting legal and financial consequences.
Yeah.
So I'd say being proactive, not just reactive, is very important.
Agreed. Adrian, I know you've done some testing and
Yeah. So, after looking at a bunch of these tools, it's clear that there's a bunch of use cases here, different philosophies, that people are taking into this area. Some of the tools are very focused on scanning the entire internet and trying to be as complete as possible, while others are more focused on, just surfacing the most important things. And it's an interesting conundrum, that you have to kind of balance those two things, I think, because otherwise this becomes yet another security tool. It says, hey, guess what? You have a million more things to make decisions on, to decide what to do with, to prioritize, to figure out, and I think most security teams probably don't have the resources to do that on their own, so I find myself leaning towards the tools that do the most work for you in that respect. Because when we're talking about not only, when we say attack surface management, it's not only your direct infrastructure, but like you're saying, it's still debatable, whether or not I'm going to include some of these companies that lean more on data leaks, because there are some like Digital Shadows that and Terbium Labs that only look at the data leaks side of things, which is not really what we're trying to look at here. But I'll totally buy that. That can totally be part of it. Things that show up on, have I been pwned? Stuff that gets used in credential stuffing, things like that. Keys on public code repositories. There's so much here. And I think it's really an accomplishment if you can bring all that together, in a meaningful way, and prioritize it and make it useful to a security team where they're just not suddenly buried in just thousands and thousands of new tasks.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. There are vendors that message on exposure, and what I like about what you built, Ilia, is that it really is focused on exposure, right? It's not like narrow in one particular area. Is to be effective at security, you have to first understand your exposures and then have a really clean and neat process to respond to those. My question for you is, how do you make it easy for your customers to view the threats and actually take action?
So I'd probably also mention that why we decided actually to bundle attack surface management and dark web monitoring is because we observe some organizations that believe that dark web monitoring is a good start. They will search for some keywords, their domain names, and indeed this is a good start, but especially during the pandemic, we see a tremendous number of organizations who are silently breached. They are unaware that they have been hacked, despite their continuous monitoring of the dark web. Why this happens, one of the examples we may have is that their employees, their loyal employees who are motivated to continue their operations during the pandemic, they create shadow IT resources, spanning from Dropbox, where they can upload their customer database, to some in-house managed, created somehow in the cloud or somewhere, simple CRM systems in order to replace their corporate systems that they cannot use for one reason or another. Eventually, such systems are oftentimes vulnerable, are exposed to the internet, and when they are silently breached, no one is aware. And importantly, if you are aware that you have this specific system that is operated by your team or contains your data, you will likely detect it on the dark web. However, if you just take your keywords, your brand name, your domain names, and you just search for them, you will likely miss something. So this is, I would say, one of the key reasons we decided to make it like everything in one package. So you will be able to make well-informed, risk-based, threat-aware decisions. And the idea behind the ImmuniWeb platform is that you can start with very simple discovery, because in order to start the discovery process with ImmuniWeb, you just enter your company name, no other actions, no other details are required, and you will be able to see what the attacker is capable to see, is capable to ferret out from the outside without any access to your technical data, to your internal information. And you will, practically speaking, put yourself into the attacker's shoes. And then you can observe, you can make decisions, you can correlate your assets, you can correlate some misconfigurations, weaknesses with different noise on the dark web with confirmed and verified incidents. So you really have some substance to make sound decisions that based on facts, and that can prevent different incidents instead of just reacting on them.
How do you do the search from just company name? Can you give me some examples? Because like I think you bring up a really good point that especially today, there's so many tools out there that are for free, not security tools, but like if I'm struggling with my CRM, it's a great example. I can go to HubSpot, get a free account, start using a CRM, and start putting company data on there. And how do you find that kind of stuff, I guess, at a high level without giving away any trade secrets or anything, right?
So I would say we have a myriad of different examples, and usually we have unique customer names, so it's not a big challenge. Okay. However, if we see that we have the very same company name in Spain and let's say in Germany, we will probably need to contact our customers to ask for clarification about which specific company they are talking about. But this is very rare case. Okay. Then once we have a company name, we usually start with a website, and then we have all interrelated, intertwined resources. We go through sometimes very long chains of discovery. For example, we may identify a source code that is likely owned or belongs to the customer because it contains different APIs, different IP addresses belonging to the customer, and we see that likely the source code belongs to the customer, and we may discover some assets in the source code. Then let's say we discover a website that is hard-coded there. We see that the website is located in the cloud. Then we try to identify neighboring web applications. So the exploration chain can really be pretty long. Sometimes it takes weeks to ferret out all possible assets. Some other searches are fairly simple. You can just use different databases of whois records, of IP ranges. Frequently, you can easily identify different websites belonging to the customer. Cloud storage, it really depends on the cloud provider. Sometimes you can just brute force identifiers, or subdomains. In other more specific use cases, you really have to find a technical nexus. For example, that there is some data that is being loaded from the cloud. Sometimes you may see, you may find a document enumerating cloud resources of the customer. So it can really be a long process, but given how diverse today's environment, IT environment is, sometimes you can just go to Stack Overflow and you will see engineers of your client talking about many interesting and oftentimes confidential things. And I would say external discovery is not that complicated. It is definitely time consuming. It requires a lot of processing power. It requires a lot of storage capacities. And it also requires powerful technology to distill, to purify the data, because you will have a lot of noise otherwise. And for example, at ImmuniWeb, we use machine learning to remove duplicates, to eliminate some of the elements, host assets that are unlikely owned or belongs to our customer. So it's an interesting process where you really need to continuously improve the algorithms. For example, when we are searching for mobile apps, different mobile app stores, they continuously change the ways you can interact with them. So our engineers in charge of mobile application discovery, I know that they make amendments almost every week. Cloud, similar issues. So it's an ongoing process of continuous improvement and discovery.
Ilia, how much are you kind of fingerprinting the source code? It's interesting. I was looking at a piece of an application. It had some JavaScript. It wasn't obfuscated. Not that de-obfuscating is necessarily that tough, but it does make it a little harder, especially to provide automation depending on how advanced the obfuscation is. But in the JavaScript, it was like, it's this version. It was released on this date, and these are the two developers' names, first and last, separated by a comma. I mean, that must be some of the good indicators that you have to go, like, where else have these developers pushed code, searching Stack Overflow, right? Those are the kind of breadcrumbs that I'd imagine you're looking for, right?
You mentioned several good examples, yes, or I would probably say the biggest challenge is not really obfuscation, but it's rather about custom modification of a JavaScript library. Because when you have some parts of the source code that is removed, that's more or less fine. But when you also have some in-house code that was manually added, this makes fingerprinting a challenging process. So it really depends on the specific use case. Sometimes you have bundled JavaScript libraries that come with a specific CMS. So sometimes you may rely on different companies to say, okay, if you have this specific software, most likely this is a specific version of the JavaScript library. So sometimes you have complicated use cases when it's just technically impossible to fingerprint a specific version, but at least you can guess, saying that this specific version is likely falling into the range of 1.2 to 1.4. And we know that the most recent is 1.6. So regardless, which specific version you have, make sure that you will update this specific JavaScript library as soon as possible.
Yeah, that gets really tricky. Ilia, tell us about the community edition. What features are in the community edition and what functionality, and then how does that differ from the commercial version?
So community edition is something that we provide at no cost for anyone. Today we have almost 100,000 daily tests, and we offer 4 free online tests to check application security of your website, to test your mobile application, to search for your dark web exposure and different phishing, domain squatting, social network squatting activities, and also to check your SSL, TLS encryption and hardening. I would say the overall idea behind the community edition is to provide everyone, regardless his or her technical skills, background, geographical location, with an access to a foundational cybersecurity and compliance. So students, individual developers, municipal governments, SMEs, everyone who cannot afford paying for cybersecurity can get basic security, basic test of his or her website, mobile app, can identify whether their organization is exposed on the dark web. And it is also something that brings, I would say, good recognition to ImmuniWeb, because we have many students who are becoming cybersecurity executives, and who remember ImmuniWeb, who is offering this at no cost, and would build a sustainable relationship with the community.
That's awesome. Adrian, more questions for Ilia?
Yeah, no, I just think that's it's a pretty solid model. Having worked on the vendor side, I've seen a lot of positive relationships built that way through an open source version of the product or a community edition, something like that. Because oftentimes, we just need a window into what this product can do. Just to call out another random one, how many people have used Qualys's SSL labs, to take a look at their, the state of TLS SSL on a particular web server. That it's a really handy community tool, and I think just a little bit of exposure into this, and you get a really quick and solid idea of everything that you can do with it. And I just think that's the way to go, from just putting on my vendor hat, my sales and marketing hat. It's I think one of the most challenging things is just testing out a product, just understanding what it does and what it can do. And if you have to go through 20 sales meetings to get to that point to where you're doing a proof of concept, oftentimes people just give up, even though it might be a good product, they'll move on to something else.
Ilia, what are some of the major differences between the community edition and some of your paid offerings?
Probably I'd say community edition is really a foundational proposal. For example, we will perform holistic software composition analysis of your website. So we will fingerprint your CMSs, your JavaScript libraries, different extensions, plugins, and we will tell you whether there are publicly disclosed vulnerabilities for the specific software versions that you have. But given that this is publicly available solution, publicly available online tool, we cannot be intrusive. So we won't perform any types of fuzzing. We won't be testing for SQL injections. We won't perform any aggressive testing or scanning. And therefore, some of the complicated vulnerabilities impacting your in-house code will likely remain undetected. Okay. And by definition and by design, you need penetration testing in order to discover them. However, for most of the users of the community edition, I would say such non-intrusive, production-safe approach will likely suffice because most of them have standard installations of WordPresses, Drupals, Magentos, and they don't need really advanced penetration testing. And this will fully cover their modest needs and ensure that they will not be compromised by a new zero-day in one of their WordPress plugins, for example.
That's awesome. That's great. Adrian, more questions for Ilia?
Yeah, well, not so much questions. Just another observation here is that I like the fact that if you need to use ImmuniWeb for a single project, say I'm consulting with a company, maybe they had a breach or something like that, and I just need to get a good view of everything that they have. This is something where it could be 2 a.m. the middle of the night. I can just whip out a credit card and and pay for a one-time scan. Which I find really handy. It's not something you typically see with a lot of products in this category. They tend to it's more of a large enterprise 1 to 3 year agreement across a whole bunch of assets. But it's always nice to be able to use a product, in more of a consulting, from more of a consulting perspective. Like I just need it for the single project, and I'm not sure if I'll ever use it again. And it's really nice from that respect. Also, I do have a question, talking about integrating it into developer workflows, exposing the stuff to DevOps teams, things like that. You mentioned that it does integrate, well into that stuff. Could you touch on that a little bit, Ilia?
Sure. So practically speaking, we have integrations with the most popular tools, spanning from Jira and GitHub Issue Tracker, for example, to ServiceNow. And we also have technology alliances with the leading web application firewall providers like F5 or Fortinet or Imperva or Barracuda. So alongside with a report with the vulnerabilities, you get customized rule sets so you can easily remediate, deploy virtual patching in 2 clicks. So we really try to make sure that developers, they won't get a PDF report and start, discussing how they hate penetration testing, but they will be in a convenient position to prioritize with their ongoing existing tasks. They will have a simple way to virtually patch the vulnerabilities while they are doing more important things. So we're really trying to make it easily consumable, easily digestible. And Adrian, just another point regarding the availability of ImmuniWeb. We really enjoy this flexibility as well, because I know many large accounts who, for I would say, internal organization reasons, they don't want or they cannot yet consume a subscription, and they really enjoy that they can customize their consumption model in any way they want. So if they would like to conduct 5 pen tests this week and 17 more next week and nothing for the 5 consecutive weeks, that's perfectly fine. We try to deliver most flexibility. And sometimes, in large organizations, we still have I would say, operations organized in such a way that developers will not enjoy a subscription because they just cannot consume so many vulnerabilities and findings. So it will just, bring a mess. And I observe that some of the startups from the cybersecurity industry, they impose obligatory subscription. We obviously have a subscription, and we have a growing number of large customers who prefer subscription for many good reasons. But likewise, we have a small portion of clientele who really enjoys this flexibility that 24/7, 365 days a year, you can customize, schedule, and start your penetration test. You have no restrictions, you have no binding duties, and we're really trying to make sure that everyone who is using ImmuniWeb on a one-time basis or on a continuous basis will feel comfortable.
Yeah, definitely. And one last question. One thing I think I've seen that's really divided this market is the idea that this tool should just be used for your own resources, things that you own. Or that they're just wide open for everybody. If say you've got a third-party vendor or a competitor or just a company that you saw in the news get breached, that you can use this attack surface monitoring product to go see what they look like. Go check them out. And I've noticed it's very polarizing. Like some of these companies, some of these products, are very focused and say, yeah, no, you have to actually prove that you own these assets. And that's the only way you can, that will run any of these scans for you is if you can prove that you own this domain or you own these resources. And that's one extreme. And then the other extreme are the folks that have these scans of the entire internet. And really what you're paying them for is the ability to just query that database of internet scans. So just curious on your view, like, I'm not sure if there's legal issues, since all this is public data, right? With giving people access to other people's results, or if that's more of a product focus or a business focus.
That is a great question, Adrian. I'd probably say the question is really complicated. I would say a lot of customers of ImmuniWeb use ImmuniWeb Discovery, our discovery tool for third-party risk management. The advantage is that ImmuniWeb Discovery is OSINT-based, It is non-intrusive. It is production safe, so we'll not be running any aggressive port scanning. We won't be doing, fuzzing of your web applications. So it is safe to be run on third parties. Okay. From a formal viewpoint, you don't really need a permission. Okay. However, we always ask our customers that they coordinate this third-party risk management with their vendors. It's not even a question of law, I would say. It's rather a question of ethics. And we see some good development of law. For example, the US Department of Justice, last year, they released guidelines on how to explore, how to monitor dark web, not to be in violation of US federal law, okay, but you also have to keep in mind state laws, and sometimes they can be tricky, okay? But at least there are guidelines how to perform dark web monitoring without violating US federal laws. So in a nutshell, what we also do at ImmuniWeb when our customers are performing third-party discovery, for example, we will not provide them with plain text passwords, even if they're widely available on the dark web, or you can find them on Pastebin, for example. We will just inform them about specific data breaches, incidents implicating their vendors, because at the end of the day, you don't really need to see personal, oftentimes passwords of your vendor employees. You just need to be aware that a specific incident occurred when and what is the scale. And then you will probably be able to support your third-party vendor, your supplier. I would say the idea of third-party risk management we provide at ImmuniWeb is not to expose, but rather to support the third parties to make sure that our clients and their external vendors will be able to collaborate, will be able to support each other. Oftentimes, it's a question of cost. Who will pay for discovery? Who will pay for mitigation? Who will pay for insurance? And I'd say today we have a lot of polarized approach. Sometimes in large organizations, they shift the burden of cybersecurity to their vendors, making, I would say, unreasonable contractual clauses saying that regardless, whatsoever happens, you will be accountable and you will pay us all fees, costs, attorney fees. Sometimes, we have country-wise, I'd say we have contracts that I would say don't bring a lot of value. They just ask questions like, do you have a web application firewall and do you have an antivirus software? And if you say yes, you quickly pass the compliance. So I think that third-party risk management is to be risk-based, has to consider, which type of data you entrust to a specific vendor, its size, because sometimes, with startups, it's easier to negotiate the conditions. However, it does not necessarily provide you with a better protection, because what I know from my experience, when your suppliers immediately agree to sign your terms of service, for me, it's rather a red flag, because usually I would say all vendors will try to negotiate something, will try to ask for a couple of amendments. Otherwise, they just probably didn't read it. They just signed it and sent it back to you. Or they're so desperate to get cash that they are prepared to sign any agreements you provide them with. So for me, when your third party, when your vendor immediately signs any terms of service you provide them with, it's rather a bad sign. So I would say that third-party risk management is really to be tailored for specific use cases. For example, if you have an external cleaning company that is in charge of your office management and cleaning, probably you need to pay a lot of attention on physical security, background check, and other things. However, when you entrust your, I would say, trade secrets or PII of your customers to third parties, you really need to make sure that it's not just a questionnaire that says yes to all questions and confirms that their organization has all the security controls in place, but you should also negotiate somehow in a fair manner, in a two-sided manner, that you will be getting at least yearly penetration testing reports, internal security assessment reports on a monthly basis. So you will really have some tangible proofs that the vendor is not just striving to make security controls effective and efficient, but that they're being tested, preferably by a third party, that you have a thorough and well-thought incident response plans, that you have data breach investigation plan, because otherwise you may be liable for your third party, because frequently, and this is what we observe both in the European Union and in the United States, frequently a large company may be liable for negligence of a third party, saying it was your duty as well to control, to ensure that your suppliers take due care of the data of your customers that you entrust to them. And frequently we just see that courts say, you have a lot of money, so you will be paying for your smaller suppliers and vendors. We don't really care that they were grossly negligent and you did some due diligence and you've been following a specific framework. It's not a checkbox approach. You really have to consider all the details, and sometimes you have to overinvest, in some of your suppliers to make sure that your data and data of your customers is secure.
Yeah, that's a really interesting can of worms. I'd love to have you back on to dive deeper into that, negligence and third-party risk assessments. And I mean, it's a really interesting topic. I've been having conversations with a lot of folks, on those topics in the last couple of weeks. And liability there, it's hugely interesting, especially from country to country too.
Right.
Ilia, thank you so much for appearing on Enterprise Security Weekly. I want to encourage our listeners to check out the Community Edition. It's really good stuff. I actually just ran it as we were talking. So very easy to do and completely free. Thank you very much for appearing on the show today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
And that will conclude this edition of Enterprise Security Weekly. Thanks everyone for listening and watching. See you next time.